The sound of the slap echoed through the marble halls of the mansion like thunder cracking across a clear sky. Amelia didn't cry, she just stood there, frozen, her cheek burning, her heart collapsing in on itself. The man who had once promised to love and protect her more than life itself now looked at her as if she were something vile, something unworthy of trust. Her husband, Alexander Hayes, one of the city's youngest self-made millionaires, had let jealousy poison his soul. That single moment of rage would become the scar neither of them could ever fully erase. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories, because this story will remind you that even broken hearts can find the strength to rise again. Amelia Hayes had once believed in fairy tales. She grew up in a small town where love wasn't about luxury, it was about laughter. When she met Alexander, she thought she had met her forever. He was magnetic, confident, ambitious, the kind of man who could light up a room just by walking in. They met at a charity gala when she was an art student working part-time to afford tuition. He donated millions that night, and she donated her heart without even realizing it. Within a year, she went from living in a tiny rented apartment to residing in a glass-walled mansion overlooking the city skyline. But luxury, she would soon learn, has a cruel way of hiding loneliness. Alexander's empire grew fast, too fast. Money attracted attention, and attention bred insecurity. Whispers began to circulate among his so-called friends. Amelia is too quiet. Too soft. Too perfect. She's probably after his money. Others told him they saw her talking too long to a male art dealer at a gallery, or that she smiled too warmly at a waiter. The seed of doubt planted in his mind became an uninvited monster that grew every day. And Amelia, who once had his laughter, now had his silence, and eventually his suspicion. She tried to reach him. She wrote letters, left messages, cooked his favorite meals, wore the perfume he loved. But Alexander had stopped seeing his wife. He saw only a reflection of his own fears. And one night, when she returned home from an art exhibit, his paranoia reached its breaking point. He accused her of betrayal, wild, baseless words that she didn't even have the strength to refute. Before she could speak, before she could breathe, his hand came down. Hard, cold, final. Amelia didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She didn't even defend herself. She simply looked into his eyes with a calm that unsettled him, the kind of calm that comes when something inside a person quietly breaks. Then she turned and walked away. She spent the night in the guest room, her heart aching, her dignity bleeding, but her spirit strangely awake. For the first time in years, she saw the truth. She had lost herself trying to please a man who no longer saw her worth. The next morning, Alexander tried to apologize. His voice was hollow, his eyes red from sleepless guilt. But Amelia barely responded. She smiled faintly, said she needed some space, and went out into the garden. The ivy climbing along the back fence caught her eye, wild, untamed, and strangely beautiful. An idea formed in her mind, not out of malice, but out of pain and poetic justice. For the next few days, Amelia carried out her plan quietly. She knew Alexander loved tending to his rare garden on weekends. It was his only escape from stress. He especially loved his new hammock corner, surrounded by fresh plants and vines. What he didn't know was that among those vines now grew something dangerous, poison ivy, carefully interwoven by Amelia's delicate hands, hidden behind the lush green. Leaves he admired so much. She didn't want to hurt him, not truly. She only wanted him to feel something, to itch, to burn, to understand that careless actions can leave invisible marks. Days later, Alexander's hands began to blister. His skin itched so violently that he couldn't sleep. Doctors were baffled. He had an allergic reaction, they said, likely from something in the garden. Amelia watched silently, her face unreadable. But when he looked at her, truly looked, he saw something shift in her eyes. It wasn't anger anymore, it was distance, a gentle, almost sorrowful detachment that scared him more than any illness could. He realized then that the worst pain isn't physical, it's emotional. The woman he had once cherished had slipped away, replaced by someone stronger, quieter, unreachable. He tried to win her back, bought her gifts, flowers, even offered to take her away to the places she always dreamed of visiting. But Amelia didn't need gifts or vacations. She needed respect, trust, and an apology that came from the soul, not the wallet. One evening, he found her in the garden again. She was painting, something she hadn't done in years. The canvas glowed in the golden light, filled with swirling blues and soft greens. It was a portrait of ivy creeping around a mansion's walls, beautiful yet suffocating. When he asked what it meant, she simply said, "It's about love. How it grows wild if you don't tend it carefully." That night, Alexander wept alone. The itch on his skin had faded, but the one inside his heart only deepened. He began to see all the moments he'd ignored her, all the times she reached out and he turned away. His empire felt empty without her laughter echoing through its halls. Slowly, he began to change, not for her forgiveness, but because guilt had finally taught him humility. He sold off some of his company shares and restarted the art foundation Amelia once dreamed of creating. He volunteered, painted, and learned the quiet strength of remorse. Amelia, meanwhile, moved out for a while. She rented a small studio apartment and began teaching art again. She found herself surrounded by colors, canvases, and the joy of freedom. And slowly, she began to heal. Months later, Alexander visited one of her exhibitions. He didn't say much. He just stood before her painting, the one called Poison Ivy. It showed two figures, one standing strong amidst vines, the other kneeling, covered in green marks, looking up with regret. Beneath it was a small inscription, "Some lessons bloom through pain." When Amelia noticed him, she didn't turn away. Their eyes met, and for the first time in a long while, there was understanding, not of love reborn, but of respect restored. She forgave him silently, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. Alexander would carry the memory of that day, the slap, the ivy, the silence, for the rest of his life. And though they never returned to what they once were, they both found something even rarer, redemption. He learned that love without trust is just possession, and she learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing yourself from the chains of pain. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support helps bring more real, emotional stories of courage and healing to life. Speech balloon special request. Comment below, do you believe people who break your heart can truly change?